So having Python do simple calculations for you is great, but we also want to be able to use Jupyter Notebooks to process the data from our lab experiments. And there's a really great package for doing this called pandas. So in this code cell, the first thing that we're doing is importing the pandas library under an alias PD. Again, you don't need to change anything about this. You don't need to know everything about pandas. I'm going to give you the commands you need for it. Now, Jupyter Notebook doesn't actually take in the data. What it does is points to a Google Sheet that has the data. And so if you take this link, actually if you take this first part of the link without the export, you'll be able to find the spreadsheet for our first lab activity. Let's increase the view there. So what's going to happen is I have a tab here called Data Template. We need to leave this clear of any data because everybody needs to be able to make a copy of it. In order to make your own copy of it, just follow the instructions here on the README tab. So you right-click here on Data Template. You click on Duplicate. What that's going to do is create a copy of this, and then what you want to do is right-click on your duplicated copy and click on Rename. That's going to allow you to put your name on here. That's exactly what I've done here. I've called it data-Brian, and I've put in some data just for the sake of demonstration. These are not actual numbers from an experiment. I just pulled them in for the sake of demonstration. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to point the Jupyter Notebook to this Google Sheet. In order to do that, I need two things. I need the name, or excuse me, the ID of the spreadsheet. That's this gobbledygook code up here that always happens after spreadsheets. And then I need the name of my actual sheet here, right? We've got several tabs. I need the name from my tab here, data-Brian. So we're going to put that information in here. We've already put in the spreadsheet ID here, so you should not need to change that. The only reason you would need to change that is if you created your own spreadsheet, but instead we're creating our own tab within the spreadsheet. So this should be the same, but if you run into any problems, just double check and make sure that this ID up here is the same as this ID up here. Then what you want to do is put in your sheet name. So my sheet is named data-Brian with some spaces on either side of the dash. You just change that to the name of your sheet. What this is now going to do, again, you don't need to change any of this because it's already putting in the sheet name as my sheet here. So this is saying, pandas, please read in from Excel at this URL the name of my sheet here, my sheet. And when you run that, what it's going to do is read that in as something called a data frame. You can think of a data frame as being like a spreadsheet that is saved locally here at the Jupyter Notebook. It's a little bit different than an actual spreadsheet, but for our purposes, calling it a spreadsheet is close enough. And then what we're doing here is printing the data frame. Now this can be a little bit dangerous if your spreadsheet is really big. We're not going to run into that, but if you ever bring something in that's very big, you might end up with a lot of stuff here and it might omit some things for the sake of the display. But what I want you to notice here, what it's printed, number of antinodes, frequency wavelength, over here, number of antinodes, frequency wavelength, and it's all the numbers that I put here in the spreadsheet. So it's taken all the information, all the data that I had in that spreadsheet, and now that information is available here in the Jupyter Notebook for me to work with all my programming power.